The city only feared Adrian Blackwell when he was standing. Nobody had ever imagined what would happen if he fell. Rain slammed against the back windows of Valentino's like fists demanding entry. The kind of cold February rain that soaked through wool coats in seconds and turned Manhattan sidewalks into rivers of reflected neon. I checked my watch for the third time in under a minute as I stepped through the restaurant's rear exit and into the alley behind the building. An batu A. Too late for businessmen. Too early for honest people. The alley smelled like wet concrete. Cigarette smoke. An engine oil drifting from the nearby avenue. My driver should have been waiting at the curb. He wasn't. That was the first sign. The second was the silence. No traffic noise from the corner. No movement from the security detail that should have been stationed nearby. Just rain, heavy enough to blur the world into streaks of gray and silver beneath the flickering security light overhead. I stopped walking. Every instinct I'd sharpened over 15 years in this city tightened at once. Something was wrong. My hand moved beneath my coat automatically, fingers brushing cold metal at my side. But a voice cut through the darkness before I could react. Boss. Familiar. Male. Calm. One of my own men stepped from the shadows near, water dripping from the shoulders of his black coat. Anthony Russo. 38 years old. Loyal for nearly a decade. Or at least I'd thought so. His expression looked strange tonight. Too empty. You're late, I said quietly. Rain slid down the back of my neck beneath my collar. Anthony smiled. But it never reached his eyes. Traffic. Then another figure appeared behind me. Footsteps splashing through shallow puddles. Too close. My pulse slowed instead of quickening. Funny thing about danger, when you live beside it long enough, fear disappears. What replaces it is clarity. I turned slightly. Enough to catch movement in the reflection of a darkened window. 2 men. Both armed. Both familiar faces. My stomach tightened harder than the winter cold ever could. Not enemies. Mine. That's disappointing. He muttered. Anthony's jaw flexed once. It's business. Adrian. Business. That word had buried more bodies than bullets ever did. The rain intensified, hammering the alley hard enough to drown out distant sirens. For one strange second, all I could think about was how tired I suddenly felt. 34 years old. Half my life spent building an empire men were apparently willing to kill me for. I almost laughed. Then everything happened too fast. A sharp crack split through the rain. Heat exploded across my shoulder, like someone had driven a branding iron through bone. My back slammed against the brick wall behind me hard enough to knock the breath from my lungs. Somewhere nearby, metal clattered against concrete. Voices blurred together. I pushed away from the wall, vision swimming as rainwater mixed with blood beneath my collar. Anthony stepped backward first. Coward instinct. He couldn't even look at me anymore. Finish it. Somebody barked. But headlights suddenly flashed across the mouth of the alley from the street beyond. Tires hissed over wet pavement. The men hesitated. 1 second. Maybe 2. Long enough for survival to interrupt betrayal. Go. Anthony snapped. Footsteps disappeared into the storm. Then silence rushed back in. My knees hit the pavement harder than I expected. Cold water soaked through my slacks instantly. Somewhere above me, a security light buzzed and flickered weakly. I stared at the cracked screen of my phone lying 3 feet away in a puddle. Useless now. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody was coming. The city's most feared man was bleeding out behind a restaurant while taxis rolled past less than 50 yards away. I lowered my head once. Just for a second. Just long enough to feel exhaustion creep through me heavier than the rain. Then I heard it. Small footsteps. Careful. Hesitant. A child's voice broke softly through the darkness beside me. Hey. I forced my eyes upward. A little boy stood there beneath an oversized blue raincoat, curls damp against his forehead, tiny sneakers soaked through from the puddles. Maybe 6 years old, too skinny for winter, too young to be alone this late at night. He looked at the blood staining my shirt, then at my face. Most people looked at me with fear. This kid looked at me like I was just another hurt human being lying in the rain. He stepped closer before I could speak. Then his small hand touched my sleeve gently. "Don't sleep yet," he whispered. And somehow, that scared me more than the gunshot. The kid should have been terrified of me. Every adult in this city usually was. Politicians lowered their voices when I entered a room. Men twice my size avoided eye contact. Entire neighborhoods went silent when my name appeared in conversations. But this little boy standing in front of me in a raincoat 2 sizes too big only looked worried. Not scared. Worried. His hand stayed wrapped around my sleeve while rainwater dripped from the end of his nose. "You are bleeding a lot," he whispered carefully, like he did not want to make the situation worse by saying it too loudly. My shoulder burned with every heartbeat now. Warm blood soaked through my shirt beneath the cold rain, and the alley tilted slightly when I tried to straighten up. Not good. I forced myself to focus on the kid, instead of the pain. "Where are your parents?" My voice sounded rougher than usual. Weak. I hated that. The boy glanced toward the mouth of the alley, then back at me. "My mom is looking for me." He hesitated. "She gets scared when I disappear." Smart woman. Children disappearing after midnight in Manhattan usually did not end well. I looked past him toward the street. Still no sign of my security team. Which meant one of 2 things. Either they were dead, or somebody had made sure they stayed away tonight. Neither possibility improved my mood. The kid crouched beside me suddenly, rain splashing around his sneakers. "Can you stand?" I almost laughed at that. A 6-year-old trying to help me to my feet. "Probably. That means no," he said quietly. The answer caught me off guard enough that I looked at him properly for the first time. Poly skin, brown curls sticking to his forehead, gray eyes too observant for someone his age. He reminded me of those stray dogs people abandon near the docks sometimes. Small things that survived because they learned to read danger early. Footsteps echoed from somewhere beyond the alley entrance. Faust. Panicked. Noah. A woman's voice. Breathless. Terrified. The little boy immediately stood. "Mom." She appeared seconds later beneath the glow of the streetlight. And for one strange moment, everything else disappeared, behind the sound of rain hitting concrete. She could not have been older than 29. Dark blonde hair pulled into a loose ponytail, already ruined by the weather. Thin gray sweater beneath a cheap winter coat that was soaked through completely. Her chest rose sharply as she caught sight of her son standing beside a bleeding stranger in a dark alley at nearly 2 a.m. Fear crossed her face instantly. Then calculation. Her eyes moved over me fast. The blood. The tailored coat. The watch on my wrist worth more than most people made in a year. She understood danger quicker than most people did. Good instinct. "Noah," she said carefully, keeping her voice calm despite the panic underneath it. "Come here." He looked between us. "But he is hurt." "Now." The boy obeyed slowly, moving to her side while still watching me with concern that made no sense. The woman kept one hand protectively against his shoulder. "Smart again. I am calling 911. She said. "No hospitals." The words came out sharper than intended. She froze slightly at my tone. Most people would have backed away immediately. She did not. Instead, she narrowed her eyes at me like she was trying to solve a puzzle she did not want to touch. "You were shot," she said quietly, not asking, stating it. "Interesting. You know how to recognize that." She ignored the question completely. "If I call the police, whoever did this might come back." Her voice dropped lower. "And if I do not?" You might die right here. Noah tugged lightly on her sleeve. Mom. She closed her eyes briefly. I watched the exact moment. Responsibility won the argument happening inside her head. When she opened them again, they were steady, controlled. Can you walk barely? But I pushed myself against the wall anyway because the last thing I intended to do tonight was die in a filthy alley behind an Italian restaurant while a little boy watched. Standing felt like dragging broken glass through my shoulder. The alley swayed once when I pushed off the wall. And the woman noticed immediately. Her eyes narrowed with the kind of sharp attention people in medical jobs developed after too many emergencies. You are losing blood too fast, she said quietly. You should not even be standing. I ignored that. Weakness invited panic. Panic got people killed. How far is your car? She hesitated before answering. Smart again. Every instinct she had was telling her not to trust me. Unfortunately for both of us. She also looked like the kind of person who could not walk away from someone bleeding in the rain. Half a block, she finally said. Noah immediately moved to my side like we were somehow a team now. I can help. Noah, she warned softly. I am helping. He whispered back. Something tightened in my chest unexpectedly. I had seen grown men abandon friends for less trouble than this, yet this kid stayed. The rain had turned colder by the time we reached the street. My shoulder throbbed with every step. Heat pulsing beneath soaked fabric, while icy wind cut through the city blocks. Manhattan looked different at 2 a.m. Empty taxis drifting through intersections, steam rising from subway grates, neon signs buzzing above closed storefronts. The city never truly slept. It just became quieter about its sins after midnight. The woman unlocked an older silver Toyota Camry parked beneath a flickering street lamp. Rust near the wheel wells. Cracked taillight held together with tape. Clean interior, though. Noah climbed into the back seat first, clutching the sleeves of his raincoat in both hands while watching me carefully. You cannot bleed on the seats, the woman muttered under her breath as she opened the passenger door. I almost smiled despite the pain. That is your concern right now. If I panic. My son panics. Her voice stayed calm while she looked directly at me for the first time since the alley. Gray-blue eyes. Tired ones. So I am focusing on practical things. Interesting answer. I lowered myself carefully into the passenger seat, biting back the wave of dizziness that followed immediately. The car smelled faintly like coffee, crayon, and laundry detergent. Human smells. Normal ones. I had spent so many years inside armored SUVs and penthouses guarded by men with guns that I had forgotten ordinary life even existed at this hour. She started the engine. Heat blasted weakly through the vents after a few seconds. Noah leaned forward between the seats. Mom, is he going to die? Children always ask the questions adults avoided. Her hands tightened slightly around the steering wheel. Not if we can help it. We. Funny word. She glanced toward me briefly. Where exactly is this place? My vision blurred once before settling again. East 48th. Underground garage beneath an apartment building. That sounds safe? She said flatly. It is safer than a hospital. Her jaw tightened. You keep saying that because it matters. Silence settled heavily inside the car after that. Rain tapped steadily against the windshield while headlights streaked across wet pavement outside. Noah kept watching me in the rearview mirror, like he was trying to understand something adults had not explained yet. What is your name? He asked suddenly. Most people never asked me that directly. They already knew it. Or they were too afraid to. Adrian. I am Noah. I know. His small forehead wrinkled immediately. How the woman looked sharply toward me. Right. Careful. Your mom said it in the alley. Noah accepted that instantly. Children usually did. Adults were harder. The woman turned onto Lexington Avenue, with one hand tight on the wheel. I am Emily, she said after a long silence. like introducing herself had cost her something. Emily Carter. I nodded once. Thank you for stopping. The words felt strange coming out of my mouth. Gratitude was not something men like me survived by showing often. Emily glanced at me again. Suspicion still sitting behind her eyes. I have not decided if this is a good idea yet. Neither had I. The underground garage smelled like concrete dust and motor oil. Emily parked beside a black SUV, so expensive it looked unreal sitting between cracked support columns and flickering fluorescent lights. Noah leaned forward between the seats again. Eyes wide. That is your car. I nodded once. Emily stared at the vehicle for a second too long, before killing the engine. The silence afterward felt heavy. Rain still hammered the city above us, muffled now through layers of steel and cement. I pushed the passenger door open slowly. But the second my feet touched the pavement, the garage tilted sideways. My shoulder exploded with pain sharp enough to blur my vision completely. Easy, Emily said immediately. Her hand caught my forearm before I hit the side of the car. Small hand. Warm. Steady. I looked down at her automatically. Most people touched me carefully. Like proximity itself could get them hurt. Emily only looked irritated. You are not nearly as tough as you think you are, she muttered. Noah nodded seriously from the back seat. Mom says that about me too. Somehow that almost made me laugh. The elevator ride upstairs felt endless. Emily stood beside me watching the floor numbers, while Noah leaned sleepily against her side. Neither of them asked questions anymore, which worried me more than curiosity would have. The penthouse safe house occupied the entire top floor. Private elevator. Reinforced doors. Bulletproof glass overlooking Midtown Manhattan. I had not used this place in nearly 8 months. Safe houses were for emergencies. Failures. Nights exactly like this one. The moment the elevator doors opened, Noah froze. What? Soft golden lights illuminated dark marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking rain-soaked city streets, 20 stories below. Everything inside the penthouse looked untouched. Perfect furniture. Expensive art. Silence heavy enough to feel staged. Emily stepped out slowly, eyes moving across the room with visible caution. This is not an apartment, she said quietly. No. I reached into the kitchen drawer beside the entryway and pulled out a small medical kit before tossing it carefully onto the counter. The movement nearly dropped me to one knee again. Emily caught that too. She noticed everything. Sit down, she ordered. I should have argued. Men like me did not take orders well. But the room had started spinning badly enough that survival outweighed pride for once. I lowered myself carefully onto one of the kitchen chairs, while Emily opened the medical kit with practiced efficiency. Noah climbed onto the oversized cream-colored sofa nearby, wrapped himself in a blanket twice his size, and watched us with exhausted eyes. Emily peeled back the blood-soaked fabric near my shoulder carefully. Her breathing changed slightly the second she saw the wound. This needs stitches. Then do stitches. I am not a surgeon. You know enough. Her eyes lifted sharply to mine. You say that very confidently for someone who does not even know me. Faire point. She cleaned the wound anyway. Her hand stayed controlled despite the tension sitting in her shoulders. Whoever Emily Carter used to be before life exhausted her into this version of herself had clearly spent time around hospitals. Former nursing student, I asked quietly. She paused for half a second. Almost finished the program. What happened? Emily tied off fresh gauze with more force than necessary. Life happened. Right. That answer I understood. Noah shifted sleepily on the couch. Mom used to help sick people. Emily softened instantly at the sound of his voice. The change in her expression hit me strangely hard. 1 second guarded. The next unbearably gentle. Noah pointed toward me lazily. Now you are the sick people. Emily sighed tiredly. Apparently. I leaned back slightly in the chair. Exhaustion dragging heavier through my body, now that the adrenaline had faded. Warm light reflected off the marble countertops while rain streaked across the massive windows behind Emily, like silver lines painted over the city skyline. Quiet. Safe. Human. I could not remember the last time anyone had looked at me without fear or greed hidden behind their eyes. Emily finally stepped back after securing the bandage. "You should make it through the night," she said. Very comforting wording. "I believe in honesty." Noah suddenly spoke again. Voice smaller this time. "Mom." Emily turned immediately. "What is wrong?" The little boy looked toward me from beneath the blanket. The man with the snake ring, his tiny forehead wrinkled carefully. He was the one who hurt him. Every muscle in my body went completely still. The air inside the penthouse changed the second Noah mentioned the ring. Emily noticed it immediately. Her eyes shifted from her son to me. Sharp and cautious now. "Noah," she said gently. "What ring?" He sat up slightly beneath the blanket. Curls messy against his forehead. "Silver snake." The man had it on his hand. My pulse slowed in the dangerous way it always did, before anger settled in completely. Silver snake ring. Anthony. Of course, Anthony Russo had worn that ring for years. Said it brought him luck. Funny what people believed protected them. Emily studied my face carefully. "You know who he is." "Not a question." I looked toward the windows instead of answering immediately. Rain still crawled down the glass in silver streams while Manhattan glowed beyond the storm, like a city pretending it was beautiful enough to hide what lived inside it. "Maybe." Emily crossed her arms. "That does not sound reassuring." Noah looked between us nervously now, sensing tension without fully understanding it. Children always knew when adults started speaking carefully. "Am I in trouble?" he asked quietly. The question hit harder than it should have. I looked at him directly. Small kid. Bare feet curled beneath the oversized blanket. Eyes too serious for 6 years old. Nobody should have to ask that question at his age. "No," I said firmly. "You did nothing wrong. But somebody else did. And if Anthony realized a child had seen him tonight, this situation had just become infinitely more dangerous." Emily seemed to reach the same conclusion seconds later, because the color drained slightly from her face. "Who are you?" The room went quiet after that. Honest question. Simple one, too. But there was no honest answer that would not make her grab Noah and run for the elevator immediately. I leaned back slowly against the kitchen chair. Exhaustion pulling heavier through my body now that the adrenaline had fully faded. "A businessman." Emily stared at me with open disbelief. "Right. Fair enough." Noah suddenly yawned so hard, his entire body curled forward. Emily's expression softened instantly again as she walked toward him. "Come on. Baby. You need sleep." "I am not tired," he mumbled while clearly half asleep already. "Sure you are." She guided him gently off the couch, wrapping the blanket around his shoulders like armor. Noah paused before following her down the hallway. "Good night." "Adrian." Nobody had said my name that casually in years. I nodded once. "Good night." "Noah." Emily lingered near the hallway entrance after he disappeared into one of the guest rooms. Her voice dropped lower when she spoke again. "If somebody dangerous is looking for you, then they might come looking for us too. Direct. Smart. No dramatics. Just reality." "Yes." She closed her eyes briefly like she had hoped I would lie. "Fantastic." I watched her carefully. Most people panicked when fear entered a room. Emily became quieter instead. More controlled. The kind of woman who had spent years holding herself together because nobody else was going to do it for her. "You should stay here tonight," I said. "This building is secure." Her eyes narrowed immediately. "And tomorrow," I had no answer. I could give her safely. Because tomorrow depended entirely on whether Anthony believed I survived. Emily must have seen something dark shift across my face, because her posture stiffened slightly. "I do not care who you are," she said softly. If this puts Noah in danger, I am leaving before sunrise. Strange. Threats usually annoyed me. Hers only made me tired. Understood. She studied me for another long second before finally speaking again. There is clean clothing in the guest bathroom. I found them while looking for extra towels. Then she hesitated. Your fever is climbing. I will survive. That is not the same thing as healing. The words settled strangely somewhere beneath my ribs. Emily disappeared down the hallway before I could answer. Silence filled the penthouse afterward except for rain and the distant hum of city traffic below. I sat there alone in the warm kitchen light, staring at the dark skyline beyond the windows while blood slowly dried against my shirt beneath fresh bandages. Anthony had failed to kill me tonight, which meant eventually he would try again. But now there was a little boy with gray eyes and a woman with exhausted hands, standing directly in the middle of a war they did not even know existed yet. And for the first time in years, something felt more dangerous than betrayal. I woke up to silence. Real silence. Not the artificial quiet of expensive restaurants or private offices where people lowered their voices because I entered the room. This was different. Softer. Human. For a second, I did not recognize it. Pale morning light spilled through the massive windows overlooking Manhattan, turning the rain-streaked glass silver. My shoulder burned less than before. Though every movement still pulled sharply beneath the bandages, somebody had draped a dark blanket over me sometime during the night. I stared at it for a moment. Nobody took care of men like me without wanting something in return. Yet Emily had stayed. The smell reached me next. Coffee. Toast. Something sweet. I stood slowly from the kitchen chair and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through my shoulder hard enough to make the room tilt once before settling again. Still alive, though. That counted for something. Voices drifted from farther inside the penthouse. Mom. Can rich people buy dinosaur cereal whenever they want? Noah's voice. Sleepy. Curious. Emily laughed softly under her breath. Probably. That seems unfair. The sound stopped me cold halfway across the marble floor. Laughter. Genuine laughter. I could not remember the last time I had heard that inside one of my properties. Most of my homes were quiet museums, full of expensive things. Nobody touched. I moved toward the kitchen slowly. Emily stood barefoot near the stove wearing the same gray sweater from last night, though her damp hair now hung loose over one shoulder. Noah sat cross-legged on the counter, eating cereal directly from the box while watching cartoons on a tablet balanced beside him. Normal. The scene looked painfully normal. Emily turned first when she heard me approach. Her posture stiffened automatically before she relaxed again. A second later, you should still be resting. You say that a lot. Because you keep ignoring it. Noah brightened immediately when he saw me standing there. You are not dead. Encouraging start to the morning. He grinned around a mouthful of cereal. Emily slid a coffee mug across the counter toward me before catching herself halfway through the motion, like she had forgotten who I was for a second. The hesitation did something strange to my chest. It is just coffee, she said quietly. Not poison. Disappointing. Noah laughed loudly at that, while Emily looked mildly horrified that I had apparently made a joke. Interesting. I took the mug carefully. Black coffee. Too hot. Exactly how I drank it. How did you know? I asked before thinking better of it. Emily shrugged slightly. You seem like the kind of man who drinks coffee like punishment. Noah pointed his spoon toward me seriously. Mom says people who drink black coffee are emotionally unavailable. Emily nearly dropped the plate she was holding. Noah. What? He blinked innocently. You said that after Uncle Mike drank 6 cups at Thanksgiving. I stared at Emily over the edge of the mug, while color slowly rose into her cheeks. She looked away immediately. Children repeat everything, she muttered. Terrifying habit. Noah nodded solemnly. I heard that too. The strange warmth inside the kitchen lasted exactly 43 seconds before my phone vibrated on the marble countertop. One vibration, then another, then another. The screen lit up with a name I had trusted for nearly 12 years. Vincent Moretti, my head of security. Emily noticed the shift in my expression instantly. Bad news. Maybe. I answered the call without taking my eyes off the windows. Talk. Vincent's voice came low and tense through the speaker. Anthony disappeared around midnight. 3 safe houses are empty. 2 of your men are missing. I looked toward Noah automatically. He was still eating cereal, completely unaware that his life had changed 12 hours ago because he stopped in an alley to help a stranger. And silence stretched briefly. Somebody accessed traffic cameras near 48th. Vincent said carefully. They saw a silver Toyota leaving the area. Every muscle in my body locked tight. Emily saw it happen immediately. What is wrong? She whispered. I lowered the phone slowly. For the first time since this nightmare started, fear settled fully into my chest like cold metal. Anthony knew about Emily's car. The warmth disappeared from the kitchen instantly. 1 second, Noah was arguing about dinosaur cereal. The next, every survival instinct I had spent years building came crashing back into place, hard enough to choke the air from the room. Emily read it on my face before I even spoke. What happened? She asked again. Quieter this time. I ended the call slowly and set the phone face down against the marble counter. My shoulder pulsed sharply beneath the bandages. But the pain barely registered anymore. Your car was seen leaving the alley last night. Emily stared at me. And the man who tried to kill me now knows somebody helped me disappear. Noah looked between us from his seat on the counter. Spoon frozen halfway to his mouth. Smart kid. He knew fear when it entered a room. Emily crossed her arms tightly over her sweater. You were saying somebody could come after us because we gave you a ride. I held her gaze. Yes. Silence followed. Heavy. Sharp. Noah slowly lowered his spoon. Emily closed her eyes for 1 long second before turning away toward the sink. I watched her shoulders tighten beneath the thin fabric of her sweater. Not panic. Anger. Of course. She whispered bitterly. Of course this would happen to us. Noah slid carefully off the counter. Mom. She turned immediately, forcing softness back into her face so quickly, it almost hurt to watch. Hey. It is okay. Are we in trouble? Emily opened her mouth. But nothing came out. Because parents lied to protect their children. Good parents hated doing it badly. I stepped forward before she could answer. Noah. The boy looked up at me carefully. Nobody is going to hurt you. Emily's eyes snapped toward mine instantly. She did not trust promises from men like me. Smart woman. My phone vibrated again. Vincent. I answered immediately this time. Talk. We traced Anthony's last movements. Vincent said. He emptied accounts overnight. Safe houses, too. He planned this for weeks. I moved toward the windows automatically, watching yellow taxi lights crawl through rain far below. Him. Already trying. A pause. Then quieter. Adrian, there is something else. I waited. The woman and the kid cannot stay visible. If Anthony realizes the boy saw him, he becomes a liability. Liability. Funny word for a child who still watched cartoons during breakfast. My jaw tightened hard enough to ache. He is 6. I know. No. You do not. Silence stretched between us before Vincent finally spoke again. What do you want me to do? I looked back toward the kitchen. Emily stood beside Noah now, with one protective hand resting lightly against his shoulder like she could physically shield him from what was coming. Something shifted painfully inside my chest, because for the first time in years, I understood exactly what fear felt like when it belonged to someone else. Lock down every property connected to me. I said quietly. Double security at all entrances. Nobody gets near this building without my approval. Emily's expression darkened immediately. This building, she repeated after I ended the call. No. She shook her head once firmly. Absolutely not. Emily. No. She stepped closer now, exhaustion and anger mixing beneath her voice. You do not get to decide where my son and I live because dangerous men are chasing you. Noah looked overwhelmed by the sudden tension. Mom, I spent years making sure nobody controlled our lives anymore. Emily continued. Eyes locked on mine now. My son does not need another powerful man telling us what to do. Nobody spoke to me like that. Not in business. Not in my organization. Not anywhere. Yet somehow Emily Carter stood barefoot in my kitchen, challenging me without a trace of fear left in her voice. And the worst part was, I understood exactly why. This is not about control. I said carefully. It is about survival. You do not know anything about our survival. The words hit harder than the bullet had. Noah tugged lightly on her sleeve again. Mom, I am scared. Emily immediately dropped to her knees beside him, every sharp edge disappearing from her expression at once. Hey. She touched his cheek gently. Look at me. Noah's gray eyes shimmered slightly now. Are bad people coming? Emily swallowed hard before answering. Not if we stay smart. The kid nodded slowly, like he was trying very hard to be brave. I watched the two of them kneeling together beneath soft morning light spilling across the marble floor, while rain tapped steadily against the windows behind us. Small, fragile, human, and for the first time in my entire life, power felt completely useless. By noon, the storm outside had turned Manhattan gray. Thick clouds pressed low over the skyline while rain streaked endlessly across the penthouse windows. The city looked blurred, distant, like something underwater. Emily stood near the kitchen island packing Noah's backpack with shaking hands. She was trying very hard to keep steady. Extra clothes. Medicine. Noah's favorite dinosaur hoodie folded carefully on top. Small things people carried when they were preparing to run. Mom? Noah asked quietly from the couch. Are we moving? Emily forced a smile that did not quite reach her eyes. Just for a little while. He accepted the answer too easily. That hurt more than it should have. Children who moved often learned not to ask too many questions. I stood near the windows with my phone pressed against my ear, while Vincent updated me on everything falling apart outside these walls. 2 warehouses compromised. 3 men missing. Anthony still gone. Every word tightened something colder inside my chest. But my attention kept drifting back toward the kitchen anyway. Toward Emily checking Noah's inhaler twice because stress made her forget things unless she physically touched them again. Toward the exhaustion sitting beneath her eyes that no amount of pride could hide anymore. You need to eat something, she said suddenly, without looking at me. That is not a request. Vincent paused on the other end of the line. Did she just order you around? Call me if Anthony surfaces, I said flatly before ending the call. Emily slid a plate across the counter toward me. Toast. Eggs. Nothing fancy. Probably the first homemade food I had eaten in months. I can hire private chefs, he muttered. And yet you look like somebody surviving on caffeine and bad decisions. Noah nodded immediately from the couch. Mom says men who skip meals make worse choices. Emily sighed. I really need to stop saying things in front of him. The kid grinned. I sat slowly at the counter, shoulders still aching beneath fresh bandages while warm light spilled across the marble surfaces around us. Emily watched carefully until I took a bite. Satisfied, she turned back toward Noah's bag. Strange woman. She argued with me like she hated me, and worried about me like she did not know how to stop. The peaceful moment shattered when every light in the penthouse suddenly went dark. Complete silence swallowed the room for half a second, before emergency backup lights flickered dimly along the hallway floor. Noah jumped hard on the couch. Emily froze beside the kitchen island. My body reacted before thought caught up. Stay away from the windows. The words came sharp enough to make both of them move instantly. Good. Somewhere below us. Metal slammed faintly. Elevator doors, maybe. Too controlled to be an accident, Emily grabbed Noah immediately, pulling him close against her side, while fear finally broke visibly across her face. Adrian. I moved toward the security panel near the hallway. Dead. Disabled from outside. Not possible unless somebody inside my organization had access. Anthony. Of course. Noah's small voice trembled slightly behind me. Are bad people here? I looked toward him carefully. The kid was trying not to panic for his mother's sake. Same gray eyes. Same stubborn bravery from the alley. Go into the bathroom, I said calmly. Lock the door behind you. Emily shook her head immediately. No. Emily, I am not leaving you out here alone. The words hit harder than they should have. Nobody stayed beside me when danger came. They usually ran the opposite direction. Mom. Noah whispered urgently. Gripping her sweater now, another metallic sound echoed somewhere beyond the front entrance. Closer this time. Emily swallowed visibly before kneeling in front of Noah. Listen to me carefully, she whispered, brushing damp curls away from his forehead with shaking fingers. You stay in the bathroom until I come get you. Understand? Noah's eyes shimmered slightly. What about you? Emily forced another smile. Fragile this time. I will be right behind you. He nodded, because children trusted their mothers even when they were terrified. Emily guided him quickly down the hallway toward the guest bathroom, while I crossed toward the darkened front entrance. Every instinct inside me sharpening into something cold and lethal, despite the pain ripping through my shoulder. Then Noah suddenly ran back 3 steps before Emily could stop him. Small sneakers against marble. Tiny hands wrapping tightly around my wrist. Do not let her get hurt, he whispered. The fear in his voice nearly destroyed me. Noah's small hand stayed wrapped around my wrist for 1 extra second, before Emily pulled him gently back toward the hallway. Fear sat openly in her eyes now. But she still kept her voice calm for her son's sake. Bathroom. Now. Noah nodded quickly and disappeared with her down the hallway beneath the dim emergency lights. The second they vanished behind the guest room corner, every emotion left my body completely. Fear. Pain. Exhaustion. Gone. Survival did that sometimes. The penthouse sat unnaturally quiet around me, except for rain tapping softly against the windows and the distant hum of backup generators, somewhere deep below the building. Then footsteps echoed outside the front entrance. Slow. Careful. Somebody testing whether I was waiting. I moved silently across the marble floor despite the fire ripping through my shoulder. My phone vibrated once inside my pocket. Vincent. I answered immediately while keeping my eyes fixed on the door. Talk. We intercepted one of Anthony's men downstairs, Vincent said sharply. 3 others escaped the garage level. How close? Too close. Another metallic sound echoed outside the penthouse. A code lock being tested manually. Vincent swore under his breath. Adrian. Get out now. My gaze shifted automatically toward the hallway where Emily and Noah were hiding. Not happening. Silence hit the line. Vincent knew me well enough to understand what that meant. You are injured. I am aware. This is not how you survive. Funny thing was, for the first time in my life, survival no longer felt like the most important thing in the room. Another sound outside. Closer now. I crossed toward the security drawer built discreetly into the wall near the entrance and pulled out the backup weapon hidden there. Cold steel settled heavily into my hand. Familiar. Necessary, but all I could think about was Noah asking me not to let his mother get hurt. The front lock suddenly beeped once. Somebody had cracked the access code. Fast. Too fast. Anthony had definitely planned this long before last night. I stepped directly in front of the entrance, just as the handle shifted slightly from the outside. Then stopped. Silence again. The kind that felt dangerous. Adrian Emily's voice came softly from behind me. I turned sharply. She stood at the edge of the hallway, holding Noah close against her side. Neither of them should have been out here. I told you to stay hidden. Noah was scared. The little boy clutched her sweater tightly, eyes wide beneath the dim lights. Are they coming inside? Before I could answer, another voice echoed faintly through the door. Familiar. Kaum. Boss Vincent. Relief hit me so hard my knees almost weakened. I unlocked the entrance immediately. Vincent stepped inside, first wearing a dark overcoat damp from the storm. 2 security men behind him, scanning the penthouse carefully. His eyes landed on the bandages beneath my shirt, then on Emily and Noah standing barefoot in the hallway. Understanding crossed his face instantly. Building is secure again, he said quietly. Anthony is gone. Gone. Not dead. Not caught. Just gone somewhere into the city I used to control completely. Emily visibly relaxed for the first time in nearly an hour. Noah buried his face against her side with a shaky breath that sounded dangerously close to tears. Vincent studied the 3 of us silently before speaking again. There is a safer property outside the city. Nobody connected to Anthony knows about it. Emily immediately shook her head. No. Vincent blinked. Probably not used to civilians refusing direct instructions either. Ma'am, I am taking my son home. Her voice stayed calm but firm. We cannot disappear into some secret house because your world is dangerous. I watched her carefully. Exhausted. Terrified. Still standing anyway. Emily Carter had more courage than half the men who worked for me. Noah looked up at her nervously. Mom. She brushed curls away from his forehead gently. We are not running forever. Vincent looked at me like he expected me to force the issue. Maybe the old version of me would have, but Noah's frightened face kept replaying inside my head, beside the memory of his tiny hand grabbing my sleeve in that alley. You can leave if you want, I said quietly. Emily looked surprised by the answer. Honestly. So was I. But you will not be alone. Vincent turned toward me sharply. Adrian, I said they will not be alone. Silence filled the penthouse after that. Rain continued falling against the windows while the city stretched endlessly beyond the glass. Cold and gray, and full of people surviving however they could. Emily stared at me for a long moment, like she was trying to understand what kind of man stood in front of her now. The dangerous one from the alley, or somebody else entirely. Then Noah yawned suddenly against her shoulder. Exhausted enough that his small body nearly tipped sideways. Emily let out one tired breath that almost sounded like laughter. Can he stay for breakfast tomorrow? Noah mumbled sleepily before anyone else could speak. Vincent looked horrified. I stared at the kid for a second, before something unfamiliar pulled unexpectedly at the corner of my mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. Yeah, I said quietly. I think I can do breakfast.